was developed over more than a decade of engagement with a variety of stakeholders, scientists, experts, indigenous communities, NGOs, and industry. It aimed to limit the disruption and ecological harm from existing oil and gas development while also designating special areas to protect habitat for the many species that call this amazing place home. I respect that there are a variety of views on how to manage our nation's public lands, but it won't be possible for future administrations to incorporate feedback and comments on proposed actions in the NPRA if Congress approves the resolution before us today. The CRA, as we've said several times in the course of this debate, is a blunt instrument. It would prevent BLM from ever issuing a substantially similar replacement, and so this path would strip local land managers of the ability to respond to on-the-ground changes and needs for the future of the NPRA. My friends across the aisle, you don't need to do this. There are already processes in place for administrations to propose new management decisions if you don't like this plan. And the Trump administration is doing just that already, pursuing updates to the land management plans that we've been debating here using these standard inclusive mechanisms that allow for public input. Interior Secretary Burgum withdrew conservation protections for the NPRA in July. And just last week, the Interior Department finalized a new rule that overturned the previous plan. The Congressional Review Act is simply the wrong tool to address any changes to management of these lands, and it's not even necessary. So why do my Republican colleagues need to take up our valuable floor time here debating a rule that their friends in the administration have already rescinded? They just returned from a 53-day taxpayer-funded vacation, canceled 5 weeks of votes, and still have a long to-do list before the end of the year. That list, I hope, includes figuring out how to avoid another government shutdown in January. But you may wonder if my colleagues are spending time on polluter giveaways to maybe distract from something. Maybe something like the fact that President Trump has been mentioned more than 1,000 times in the Epstein emails. President Trump and House Republicans continue to push their drill baby drill agenda, even though it makes no sense for people, for the planet, or for our pocketbooks. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this distraction, this H.J. Res. 80, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would just like to point out that while the current administration did recently rescind the 2024 rule this month, passage of a CRA is still necessary to prevent a future administration from, again, weaponizing IEPs similar to this one that ignore congressional intent. And by replacing the 2022 IEP, BLM wouldn't be left in limbo. They would revert back to the initial IEP finalized under the first Trump administration, which did take into account Native tribal voices and is consistent with the requirements included in the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And with that, I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from Alaska, the lead sponsor of the House companion to this legislation, Mr. Begich.
The gentleman from Alaska is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong support of Senate Joint Resolution 80, legislation to disapprove the Bureau of Land Management's 2022 Integrated Activity Plan for the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska. Let me be very clear. This is not an abstract policy debate for the people of Alaska. This is about whether the federal government will honor both the law and its commitments to the people who call Alaska home, and whether America will choose energy independence over energy uncertainty. The National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, an area the size of Indiana, was set aside more than a century ago to ensure the United States had a strategic domestic energy supply. Congress reaffirmed that purpose in the Naval Petroleum Reserve's Production Act, directing the Secretary of the Interior to conduct a, quote, expeditious program of competitive leasing in the NPRA. But the 2022 Integrated Activity Plan, issued in the final stretch of the last administration, turned that congressional mandate on its head. It shut the door on 48% of the reserve, reducing available acreage from 18.6 million acres to just 11.8 million acres, and restricted infrastructure corridors across millions more. In effect, the plan attempted to create a wilderness area in a petroleum reserve, and it did so without listening to the people who actually live there. Alaska is asking us to act. The Inupiat people who live in the area have spoken, and they could not have been clearer. Through the North Slope Regional Trilateral, the Inupiat Community of the Arctic Slope, the North Slope Borough, and the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, we have heard that the Biden administration's 2022 plan imposed, quote, sweeping restrictions that curtail responsible development, undermine congressional intent, and disregard the well-being of the people who depend on these lands for both subsistence and livelihoods, end quote. These communities are located in an area nearly the size of Minnesota with no highway connections, extreme transportation costs, and a cost of living among the highest in the nation. Oil and gas development funds their schools, their public safety, their utilities, their clinics, basic services that most Americans assume their local government can provide. But on the North Slope, that stability exists because responsible development exists, and we have a duty to ensure that it continues. Alaska's business community stands with them. The Alaska Support Industry Alliance, representing 547 companies and 35,000 Alaskan workers, warned that the 2022 plan jeopardizes the jobs and investment their families depend on. National organizations from the National Federation of Independent Businesses to the American Exploration and Production Council to the American Petroleum Institute have also voiced their support for reversing this restrictive rule. And the administration itself has made clear that restoring access to the NPRA is a priority. President Trump's Executive Order 14153, Unleashing Alaska's Extraordinary Resource Potential, directs the Secretary of the Interior to review and rescind the 2022 decision and reestablish a balanced framework consistent with the 2020 plan. This statement of administration policy strongly supports this resolution. Mr. Speaker, Alaska is ready to power America. We are ready to help lower energy costs for families and small businesses. We are ready to strengthen national security by reducing our reliance on foreign nations. And the people who live in Alaska's far north, the people whose ancestors have called the region home for 10,000 years, are asking us to restore the balanced, lawful management framework that they helped shape. Senate Joint Resolution 80 does exactly that. It restores congressional intent. It restores certainty for Alaska's communities. It restores America's strategic energy reserve. I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting Senate Joint Resolution 80, to stand with Alaska, to stand with energy workers, with the Inupiat people of the North Slope, and with an American future grounded in abundant, affordable, secure energy. And with that, I yield back.
The gentleman from Arkansas.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to submit a letter for the record from the Inupiat Community of the Arctic Slope, ICAS, the North Slope Borough, and the Arctic Slope Regional Corporation, ASRC, that specifically states BLM failed to engage in meaningful government-to-government consultation with ASRC, the borough, and ICAS. This submission contradicts federal consultation requirements and disregards the voices of the very communities most affected. Our leadership has consistently raised concerns about this process and its outcome, yet those concerns were ignored.
Without objection, the gentleman from California, the gentleman reserves, gentleman from Arkansas reserved, gentleman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So again, the plan that this resolution targets for disapproval is not in place. It has been rescinded by the Trump administration. If ever there's a case for a misapplication of the CRA, it would be this right here. But I think, Mr. Speaker, it's an important time for us to step back and consider why using a CRA for any, frankly, public land management plan, but certainly for one that's already been rescinded, is just a recipe for uncertainty and conflict and litigation. Nearly a third of our nation's landmass, 640 million acres, is managed by the federal government. The Forest Service manages 193 million acres. BLM manages 244 million, and in addition to 713 million acres of federal minerals. For nearly 50 years, BLM and the Forest Service have managed these lands under management plans required by the Federal Land Policy and Management Act and the National Forest Management Act. And these plans, known as resource management plans, we've been calling them RMPs, establish safeguards for watersheds and recreation areas. They facilitate energy development and grazing and logging and other commercial activities, and provide a mechanism for harmonizing the needs of local communities with our national goals and perspectives. Now, just a few months ago, we debated some other CRA resolutions targeting management plans, and we explained at that time how unprecedented that was. We still don't know the extent of chaos that is going to result from these actions that have already been taken, but we do know this: under the CRA, rules, and rules is a technical term of art here, normally cannot go into effect unless they are submitted for congressional review. Now here's the problem: BLM and the Forest Service have never considered RMPs to be rules that they would submit to Congress. They've just never done that, and that's long been the case under both Democratic and Republican precedents being set by those presidents. Now that Congress has decided, apparently, to disapprove of individual RMPs, what does that mean for every other plan that is in place that wasn't submitted to Congress? What does that mean for the small businesses, the local communities, and other public land stakeholders who depend on a stable and predictable land use planning process? If the validity of these land use plans is challenged, then leases, permits, and other authorizations that depend on those plans could be called into question. This is already creating uncertainty and delays, making it nearly impossible for new projects to proceed on time. And here are a couple of examples for consideration. What would happen to the White River Oil and Gas Resource Management Plan Amendment in Colorado, which authorizes 15,000 oil and gas wells? What about the Rosemont Copper Plan Amendment for Forest Service lands in Arizona, approving a 5,000-acre open pit mine in the Coronado National Forest? Or the Gateway West, Trans-West Express, and Gateway South RMP amendments for 3 transmission lines through Wyoming, Idaho, Nevada, and Utah. Does Interior now need to go back and submit all of those RMP amendments to Congress for approval under this new Republican interpretation of the CRA? Is Congress prepared to take on day-to-day management of public lands and minerals thousands of miles from Washington, D.C.? I don't think so. But I am not the only one who has concerns about this treadmill of litigation and conflict and uncertainty that is being created here. Let me read a quote from Kathleen Sagama, President Trump's first nominee for director of BLM. And she said, quote, "There are some additional legal risks that can arise from the CRA. It's uncharted ground. And if not used wisely, there could be some legal risks introduced and some bad legal precedents." Just a few months ago, the House passed several other CRA resolutions overturning land management plans. As we said at the time, it was unprecedented. These resolutions before us continue to chart unprecedented ground, and I don't think anyone, including my colleagues across the aisle, have thought a heck of a lot about where it leads. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I would submit that a recipe for disaster is when an administration goes out on their own, goes around the laws that Congress passed, and implement bad rules on their way out the door and expect no repercussions from that. I'd say a recipe for good governance is when Congress acts within their power to disapprove of these rules, and that's exactly what we're doing with the CRA to make sure that these rules are followed. Mr. Speaker, I have no further requests for time. I'm prepared to close, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to point out that, we've heard a number of times now that more drilling is necessary in the name of energy independence. And I want to remind my colleagues that the United States is already the #1 producer of oil in the world and the #1 producer and exporter of gas in the world. but you would sure never know it when you look at the energy bills that are facing families all over this country. It is abundantly clear that the drill, baby, drill agenda is not working for everyday Americans. As long as we are dependent on the fossil fuel roller coaster, American consumers will be at the whim of the global oil and gas market. But if we want energy independence, and if we want lower utility bills, we need to get back on track with the transition to clean energy. It is cheaper, it is safer, and it is generated entirely here at home instead of being at the mercy of global price shocks like oil and gas just inherently are. Instead, this legislation would make us more reliant on fossil fuels and more entangled with the price effects of this fossil fuel roller coaster. Plus, oil from America's Arctic will not come online for many, many years. The Willow project, for example, won't start until around 2029. Meanwhile, the Arctic is warming 4 times faster than the rest of the world. Even at the Willow project, developer ConocoPhillips will use artificial chillers to freeze melting permafrost before drilling for oil. That's the kind of complexity and additional cost that is inherent in drilling in these remote, pristine parts of the Arctic. The project itself will release nearly 300 million metric tons of carbon pollution into the atmosphere over its lifetime, the equivalent of at least 66 coal-fired power plants. Again, Mr. Speaker, if we want true energy independence and security, we need to combat the climate crisis and transition to clean, renewable energy. And with that, I reserve.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I'm prepared to close and reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, if you could bear with me for one moment.
Yes.
Here it is. This is just excellent staff work, Mr. Speaker. In closing,
village.
I strongly oppose this resolution. The 3 Congressional Review Act resolutions that we've been considering here today are going to strip local land managers of the ability to respond to future challenges and changes and needs in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, the NPRA, and the Powder River Basin. If these reckless resolutions pass, these places will be locked into outdated plans that fail to account for changes in community needs, industry needs, and yes, climate-driven impacts. And these CRA resolutions are completely unnecessary because the Trump administration has already acted on their own to replace these plans. Even oil and gas industry experts across the political spectrum agree that the use of the CRA on land use plans creates regulatory and legal ambiguity. In fact, Kathleen Sagama, as I just told you, former President Trump's former nominee to lead the BLM, recently said, it's a quote worth repeating, there could be some legal risks introduced and bad legal precedent, unquote, when using CRAs in this manner. Yet apparently, my friends across the aisle are just going to do it anyway. Now, Sagama led the Western Energy Alliance, an oil and gas industry trade association. She testified before the House Natural Resource Majority many times. This misuse of the CRA will create regulatory chaos for everyone, including the industry. So I ask my colleagues across the aisle, why pursue it? House Republicans are continuing to lock the American people into higher energy costs by pushing their fossil fuel playbook and sabotaging clean, renewable energy. Our constituents deserve better. They deserve a future with clean and affordable energy where utility bills aren't skyrocketing, where we know our lands and waters won't suffer as a result. That's why I oppose this resolution and urge all of my colleagues to join me in voting no, and I yield the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California yields. The gentleman from Arkansas is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, it's been stated that gas and energy prices won't be reduced by passing this CRA, and I contend that they will, because overturning these rules would incentivize much-needed investment throughout the state or the entire North Slope. The regional impacts of increased energy production in Alaska cannot be overstated. Refineries in the region, including California and Washington, are equipped to handle Alaskan oil, and the refinery in Kenai produces most of the state of Alaska's gasoline. The North Pole Refinery provides jet fuel for our military, amongst other aviation fuels. Two other refineries located in Valdez and near Fairbanks also produce diesel and heating fuels. And let me point out that 3 out of 10 state households in Alaska rely on fuel oil, kerosene, or propane for home heating. Now, you may ask, why would they rely on these fuels that are traditionally more expensive when Alaska has trillions of cubic feet of natural gas? That's because that natural gas is on the North Slope, and even in the city of Anchorage, they're running out of natural gas because they can't move the gas from the North Slope, they can't develop infrastructure, and not only can they not meet their own needs with that gas, they certainly can't export it to our allies. As many have shared, the MPRA is essential to unleashing American energy dominance and sustaining economies throughout Alaska. Congress must also act to undo the harm that the previous administration imposed, and we must work to unlock the estimated 8.7 billion barrels of oil and 25 trillion cubic feet of natural gas the MPRA holds. By repealing this decision, we can help uphold tribal voices and revert to the 2020 IAP that considered their meaningful input. Letting these plans shut down energy production in the MPRA linger would be devastating to Alaskans, especially the Native communities on the North Slope. Without jobs, people may leave these communities, jeopardizing the culture and social fabric of the region. We cannot afford to let this happen. We must pass SJ Res 80. I urge my colleagues to support passage of the important legislation. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields the balance of his time. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 879, the previous question is ordered on the joint resolution. The question is on third reading of the joint resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
Joint resolution providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Land Management relating to National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska Integrated Activity Plan Record of Decision.
The question is on passage of the joint resolution. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. It's about 6-7. The ayes have it. For what purpose does the gentleman?
Request the yeas and nays.
California seek recognition. The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, further proceedings on this question will be postponed. Purpose does the gentlewoman from New York seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 2A.1 of Rule 9, I rise to give notice of my intent to raise a question of the privileges of the House. The form of the resolution is as follows. H-Res 889. Censuring Representative Corey Mills. In the House of Representatives, resolution censuring Representative Corey Mills. Whereas Representative Corey Mills has on several occasions conducted himself in a manner that reflects discredit upon the House of Representatives. Whereas on February 19, 2025, Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department officers were called to resolve a private matter at Representative Corey Mills' residence, where officers were called to the 1300 block of Maryland Avenue Southwest around 1:15 p.m. for the report of an assault. Whereas police reports obtained by NBC4 Washington confirmed that the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department was investigating Representative Corey Mills for an alleged assault of a 27-year-old woman that took place on February 19, 2025 at the residence of Representative Corey Mills. Whereas the first police report provided to NBC4 Washington by a source and confirmed by a second source familiar with the investigation, said that the 27-year-old woman accused her significant other for over a year of having grabbed her, shoved her, and pushed her out of the door, and also said that the woman involved showed the officer bruises on her arm which appeared fresh. And whereas NBC4 Washington also reported that the Metropolitan Police Department identified Representative Corey Mills as the significant other of the alleged victim of assault, which alleged victim was a 27-year-old woman who was not the wife of Representative Corey Mills, and that the alleged victim let officers hear Subject 1, now identified by MPD as Mills, instruct her to lie about the origin of her bruises. Eventually, Subject 1 made contact with police and admitted that the situation escalated from verbal to physical, but it was severe enough to create bruising. Whereas on February 21st, 2025, the Washington Post also confirmed 2 D.C. police officers said that the alleged victim of assault initially told a 9/11 operator and police that she had been assaulted, and that officers said she also had what seemed to be visible injuries, and that while a supervisor initially classified the offense internally as a family disturbance, police commanders later learned of the incident, reviewed the reports and body camera footage from the responding officers, and reclassified the case as a domestic violence assault. Whereas on February 21st, 2025, NBC4 Washington also reported that the Metropolitan Police Department determined that probable cause to arrest Representative Corey Mills for misdemeanor assault existed and sent an arrest warrant for Representative Corey Mills to the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. However, then acting United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Ed Martin, refused to sign the arrest warrant for Representative Corey Mills and instead returned the case to the Metropolitan Police Department for further investigation. Whereas on July 14th, 2025, a different former romantic partner of Representative Corey Mills, who was apparently in a relationship with Representative Mills from November 2021 to February 2025, reported to authorities in Florida that Representative Mills threatened to release nude images and other intimate videos of her and threatened to harm her future romantic partners in retaliation for her decision to end a relationship with Representative Mills after seeing the public reports described above concerning the alleged February 2025 physical assault. Whereas on October 14, 2025, the Circuit Court of the 3rd Judicial Circuit in Columbia County, Florida, issued a final judgment of injunction for protection against dating violence against Representative Corey Mills, based on a finding that his former romantic partner was a victim of dating violence or had reasonable cause to believe she was in imminent danger of becoming a victim of an act of dating violence. Whereas in August of 2024, the Office of Congressional Conduct adopted and transmitted to the Committee on Ethics of the House of Representatives a report indicating that there was substantial reason to believe that Representative Corey Mills may have omitted or misrepresented required information in his financial disclosure statements, accepting excessive contributions to his campaign committee in the form of personal loans and contributions that may not have derived from Representative Corey Mills' personal funds, entered into, held, or enjoyed contracts with federal agencies while he was a member of Congress, and may have accepted through his campaign committee in-kind contributions or other contributions not lawfully made. Whereas individuals who served with Representative Corey Mills have called into question the veracity of the account of events which formed the basis of a recommendation that Representative Corey Mills receive an award of a Bronze Star bestowed in 2021 for his service under enemy fire in Iraq in 2003. Whereas in August of 2024, Representative Corey Mills provided the Daytona Beach News with documents purporting to prove that he earned a Bronze Star with heroism, including a Department of the Army Form 638 recommending Representative Corey Mills for a Bronze Star, which includes a signature from then Army Brigadier Commander Arnold N. Gordon Bray. However, retired Brigadier General Bray told the Daytona Beach News Journal in August of 2024 that he did not sign a Bronze Star recommendation for Representative Corey Mills. Whereas 5 people who served with Representative Corey Mills, including 2 men who were reported as having been personally saved by Representative Corey Mills at great risk to his own life as a basis for the recommendation for his Bronze Star in the Department of the Army Form 638, disputed that Representative Corey Mills was involved in their rescue or provided life-saving care. Whereas 1 private first class cited as having been involved in one of the listed achievements on Representative Corey Mills' Army Form 638, recommending him for a Bronze Star, denied that Representative Corey Mills provided him any aid, and also denied that his injuries were life-threatening. Whereas 1 sergeant cited as having been involved in one of the listed achievements on Representative Corey Mills' Army Form 638, recommending him for a Bronze Star, called the account a fabrication and claimed that he was not involved in any claims that Corey Mills makes about me. And whereas despite the numerous available contradictions of the accounts forming the basis of the recommendation for his Bronze Star, Representative Corey Mills described the legitimate factual disputes raised by individuals he purportedly served with and rescued as, quote, slander and defamation, end quote, in a statement at the Daytona Beach News Journal. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Representative Corey Mills be...
You determine your legacy. What will it be? There are years ahead in her leadership journey in education. I have no doubt that she will leave a legacy of educational excellence, deep caring, and a spark of hope for every student she encounters. Go Chemics. Thank you, and I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, as we recently celebrated veterans across the country, H.R. 5939, the USMC Helicopter Support in Vietnam Congressional Gold Medal Act, would award a Congressional Gold Medal to the Vietnam-era Marine Corps and Navy veterans who performed vital helicopter support missions. These flight crews executed incredibly risky and dangerous operations. They successfully carried out life-saving medical evacuations, transporting approximately 189,000 service members. Recognizing those who put their lives in harm's way to help out our wounded is long overdue. With the enactment of this bill, Congress can and must take the crucial step towards finally giving these brave veterans the heroes welcome they so deserve. Thank you, and I yield back.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable the Speaker, House of Representatives, sir. I want to sincerely thank the committee for its graciousness in allowing me to waive onto the Committee on Natural Resources earlier this year. It has been a privilege to serve and to help advance environmental justices policies for the people of New York's 7th District in Puerto Rico. Thank you for the privilege of holding 3 committees over the past few years. I will continue to remain on small business and financial services. Effective this week, I will remove myself from the Committee on Natural Resources to make room for another member who wishes to take the opening. It has been an honor to contribute to the committee's mission, and I look forward to continuing to advance our shared priorities in other capacities. Signed sincerely, Nydia Velazquez, Member of Congress.
Without objection, the resignation is accepted. What purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. By direction of the Republican Conference, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 886. Resolved that the following named member be and is hereby elected to the following standing committee of the House of Representatives, Committee on Homeland Security. Mr. Fong.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Democratic Caucus, I offer a privileged resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 887. Resolved.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the resolution be considered as read.
Without objection, the resolution is considered read. And without objection, the resolution is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from North Carolina seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, by direction of the Committee on Rules, I call up House Resolution 879 and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Calendar Number 47, House Resolution 879. Resolved that upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House any joint resolution specified in Section 2 of this resolution. All points of order against consideration of each such joint resolution are waived. Each such joint resolution shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in each such joint resolution are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on each such joint resolution and on any amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except one. 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit or commit as the case may be. Section 2, the joint resolutions referred to in the first section of this resolution are as follows. A, the joint resolution, Senate Joint Resolution 80, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Land Management relating to National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska Integrated Activity Plan Record of Decision. B, the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 130, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Land Management relating to Buffalo Field Office Record of Decision and approved Resource Management Plan Amendment. C, the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 131, providing for congressional disapproval under Chapter 8 of Title 5 United States Code of the rules submitted by the Bureau of Land Management relating to Coastal Plain Oil and Gas Leasing Program, Record of Decision. Section 3, upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House a concurrent resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 58, denouncing the horrors of socialism. All points of order against consideration of the concurrent resolution are waived. The concurrent resolution shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the concurrent resolution are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the concurrent resolution and preamble to adoption without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their respective designees. Section 4. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill, H.R. 1949, to repeal restrictions on the export and import of natural gas. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and on any amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 5. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 3109 to require the Secretary of Energy to direct the National Petroleum Council to issue a report with respect to petrochemical refineries in the United States and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The bill shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill and on any amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 6. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 5107 to repeal the Comprehensive Policing and Justice Reform Amendment Act of 2022 enacted by the District of Columbia Council. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, now printed in the bill, shall be considered as adopted. The bill, as amended, shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion, except 1 hour of debate, equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 7. Upon adoption of this resolution, it shall be in order to consider in the House the bill H.R. 5214 to require mandatory pretrial and post-conviction detention for crimes of violence and dangerous crimes and require mandatory cash bail for certain offenses that pose a threat to the public safety or order in the District of Columbia and for other purposes. All points of order against consideration of the bill are waived. The amendment in the nature of a substitute recommended by the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform, now printed in the bill, shall be considered as adopted. The bill as amended shall be considered as read. All points of order against provisions in the bill as amended are waived. The previous question shall be considered as ordered on the bill as amended and on any further amendment thereto to final passage without intervening motion except 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform or their respective designees, and 2, 1 motion to recommit. Section 8. Upon transmission to the Senate of a message that the House has passed H.R. 4405, House Resolution 581 shall be laid on the table.
The gentlewoman from North Carolina is recognized for 1 hour.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the purpose of debate only, I yield the customary 30 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. McGovern, pending which I yield myself such time as I may consume. During consideration of this resolution, all time yielded is for the purpose of debate only. Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Thank you again, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the rule and the underlying legislation. Yesterday, the Rules Committee met and produced a rule, H-Res 879, providing for the House's consideration of 8 separate measures. The rule provides closed rules for consideration of SJ-Res 80, HJ-Res 130, HJ-Res 131, with 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Natural Resources or their respective designees for each joint resolution. The rule provides each such joint resolution 1 motion to recommit. Further, the rule provides closed rules for the consideration of H.R. 1949 and H.R. 3109, with 1 hour debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Energy and Commerce or their respective designees for each bill. The rule provides each bill with a motion to recommit. Additionally, the rule provides for consideration of H.Con. Res. 58 under a closed rule with 1 hour of debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Financial Services or their respective designees. The rule also provides for consideration of H.R. 5214 and H.R. 5107 under closed rules with 1 hour debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and ranking minority member of the Committee on Oversight and Government Reform or their respective designees on each bill. The rule provides 1 motion to recommit for each bill. Finally, the rule tables House Resolution 581 upon the transmission of a message to the Senate that the House has passed H.R. 4405. Mr. Speaker, after over 40 days of the Democrat government shutdown, the House has returned to regular order, and this majority is continuing to push forward with the America First agenda, the American people's agenda. All of these pieces of legislation we're considering today are in alignment with the American people's demand and President Trump's executive orders that we maintain a robust posture of American energy dominance. You know, Mr. Speaker, our Democrat colleagues have developed a strong proclivity to thumb their noses at the development of energy that comes from American soil. One must wonder why they choose to do that. They pay lip service to environmental protections and reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it's just a fact that American oil and American natural gas are cleaner and more environmentally friendly than any of our global competitors. Why would they cede our dominance on the global stage in favor of hostile actors who lack even the most basic environmental protections? We are blessed as a nation to have vast repositories of natural resources that we can draw from and utilize accordingly. When we ignore the opportunities to harness these resources for our benefit, we deny ourselves the opportunity to grow more self-sufficient. H.R. 5214 and H.R. 5107, 2 measures reported from the Oversight Committee, focus on restoring law and order in our nation's capital city, a city that ought to be a model for the rest of the nation to follow.
Does the gentlelady reserve?
I'm going on, Mr. Speaker. H.R. 5214 would revoke cashless bail in the District of Columbia and would require mandatory pretrial and post-conviction detention for crimes of violence and other dangerous crimes. H.R. 5107 would repeal the Comprehensive Policing and Justice Reform Amendment Act of 2022 enacted by the District of Columbia Council. This act targeted police officers in D.C. for simply doing their duties, and it led to over 1,600